we've been putting together this past year or two since I've been on board. We have migrant workers. They're different, like there's visas, there's certain types of visas. You see them in not just farms. We see them in a lot of industries, and they're publicly available. You can look them up. Landscaping, in Prince George's, it's the border of Prince George's and Howard, the horse, and a lot of the places in Laurel that I have not personally been to, but a lot of H-2B and H-2A visas are used. And that's one of many ways an immigrant, yes, from anywhere south of our border or other parts of the world may find themselves coming here to work on temporary work visa. So what we're trying, I think we're saying the same thing. Just go try to meet people where they are when they are vulnerable. Talk to them in Spanish if it's a Spanish speaker, whatever language. Certainly some businesses, we have Korean, Chinese speaking workers in Howard County. We have a big hub of that and that community in Ellicott City. So we're trying to do that. So, best case, we're in a setting where, a worker is just able to talk and it's friendly, it's not judgmental, and do you need, just asking open questions. What do you, could we, and then, best case, you can share a phone number. I was just chatting with someone else. It's the National Human Trafficking Hotline, or it's Safe Centers Hotline. We're always ready to get that call. And that's usually, hopefully, a beginning if someone needs help, where it starts.
Thank you both.
I was also just going to add, so in addition to being a volunteer for Fair Girls, I'm also a third-year doctoral candidate and a therapist. And so I did partner with UMD Safe a couple of times to be able to provide assessments to victims of human trafficking, namely in the immigrant population, for those U visas, and can share at least one example of what that looks like. So one of the patients that I worked with was a 50-year-old Mexican woman who came to the United States for a better life, to also be able to provide for her family in Mexico. They lived in a really poor and rural area where she wasn't able to get money in order to help them, in order to care for her children and her mother. And so that is why she came to the United States. And coming here, she was able to get over successfully, but she was working in Maryland at one of the sort of seafood restaurants or agencies. And that led one thing to another, where she wasn't just doing that. Then they had her working at hotels. They weren't paying her sufficiently. And part of what you see happens is that although we've been talking about labor trafficking and sex trafficking as two sort of separate entities, there are ways that they can cross. And so with her situation, she was exploited through labor trafficking, but then that turned up another notch where then she was further sex trafficked. And part of what they used to continue to, exploit her vulnerabilities was the fact that she was an immigrant, was the fact that she still needed that money to be able to care for her family and send that back to them. And in her talking to me, I'm 25 years old, she's 50, she was incredibly horrified. And part of what she shared to me was just how hard it was to be able to share it with me because of our age difference. It made her hard to know that she could open up about these things. And I was also thinking about what Miss Battlebrooks was saying in regards to greed. And I think it's hard to not think about these things and also think about how our capitalistic society plays a role into all of that. You can't talk about human trafficking without talking about immigration, homelessness, how the LGBTQIA community is treated, all of these different things that our larger society is dealing with, all comes in when we're talking about these vulnerabilities that take place in human trafficking.
Ms. Medina, thank you so much for sharing that. And Ms. Battlebrooks, Ms. Nunez, thank you for sharing those resources, telling us a little bit about what exists out there, in particular for our immigrant brothers and sisters who may find themselves in these unfortunate situations. We have, for our Zoom viewers, we have listed these resources in the chat. For our Facebook viewers, we will get these listed also in the comments section, so that you too will have these numbers and these organizations and their information at the ready should you encounter someone who is in the situation. And speaking of that, my next question I want to open up to anyone on the panel, and all of you please chime in, because you each have very different perspectives, and I think we're learning lots from all of you. If we in the public, let's just say myself, just in my regular day-to-day navigation of life, I encounter someone that I suspect is being trafficked, and I'm a clinical psychologist, and this really did happen to me. I encountered someone in church, right? In church, which church is a sanctuary, right? And this person comes up to me and is like, I'm being trafficked. If we encounter someone in our everyday life that we suspect or that tells us this is their situation, what to do? Can you tell us, can you give it to us step by step, what to do? What should we do? Who can we reach out to, and how can we make sure that that person is connected to someone who really can help?
I mean, I think the first thing I would say is to meet them where they are, to talk to them and sort of hear from them what they want and what they need, because we don't want to assume that we know what that is. And so, and also we want to be careful of re-traumatizing a person through us feeling of stepping in and telling them what they need. So I would say first do that. And then, you know, if that's housing, if that's hygiene products, if that's safety, getting those things down first. And I think folks have been sort of sharing in the chat, you know, those resources that you can find for that. And then if they do want to go the reporting route, then, you know, talking to law enforcement and getting them involved. I also wanted to add, I think that part of what we also don't think about is before it gets to the point of a person being a human trafficking victim or survivor, how are our conversations looking with our youth before this? Are we talking to them about consent? I think that's something that I've been really major in talking to my family members about, you know, letting your kids know at an early age, if they don't want to hug a family member, that's okay, because you don't realize the things that you're already ingraining in your kids that fall right in line with what a grooming process or a human trafficker is going to say. Hand in hand, I would say, is the adultification of Black girls. I know that I can't be the only person here that has maybe heard from a family member, even as early as 4, being told, you know, to cover up, there's a man coming over. And I think we have to be conscientious of what that is telling our youth. We're already sort of sharing those ideas of shame, cover up your body, it's your fault if something happens, rather than if we know that there are men or women, whoever in our families or community that may have these sort of ways in enacting, rather than us taking the stance and saying we're not going to have that person around our family, if we put the onus on the victim, that's also part of the problem that we have to be aware of. So largely, I think we just as a society have to be sort of conscientious of the own things that we're putting out there and our own stigmas and how that also ties into human trafficking.
I also wanted to jump in. And so I wear different roles here on, I guess, speaking on the panel, and I'm speaking in the role of being my sex offender agent and handling thousands of cases in the state of Maryland. I too was in church one day and someone said to me, "Oh, I saw you just graduated," and Don and I went through the same ROPA Academy training. And I was the keynote speaker, one of the guest keynote speaker for my graduating class. And they broadcasted and it was shown. So once persons are aware of your role, they will come to you and speak to you or talk to you about what they're going through. So what do we do, right? We be savvy, be creative about how we're going to go with this next steps. I deal with it when I'm doing home visits and I'm knocking on the door of the perpetrator, and here's another victim who's in this home, had no idea what was taking place. So me as an agent, being savvy, you know, saying, okay, well, I'm gonna bring it. So it seems like you guys can benefit from any resources, you know, and so the resources would be, like the young lady said, is it food? Is it clothes? Is it health insurance? And kind of segue into that by using that as your vehicle to now get that person into a safe place to have a safe conversation. Even with now this savvy where we can do text messages on my work phone, victims or potential victims can text us and we'll know, okay, something is going on here, we need to address this. So as a state of Maryland,